of Friends of Lakeville Education. Friends of Lakeville Education is a municipal ballot committee that was formed a few weeks ago in support of the Proposition 2.5 override here in Lakeville. And we are thrilled to have you all here tonight. We did not know what kind of turnout to expect. We didn't know if we'd have 10 people or 100 people or 200. And we got somewhere in between, but we're thrilled that every one of you is here with us tonight. We're going to spend some time with you up till 9 o'clock, and we'll end promptly at 9, if not before, talking about the Proposition 2.5 override here in Lakeville. And specifically, we want to be able to tell you our story as to why we think that this is important for the town, important for the schools, and important for all of us as citizens of Lakeville. We are, as we've said, we as the Friends of Lakeville Education are in support of the override. So much of the stories you'll hear tonight will be in support of the override. We're hoping to provide you with information which will help you vote yes on Saturday. But we do want to have a good dialogue, a good conversation as a community about the issues that have brought us to this point where we're needing a Proposition 2.5 override, so that we as a community can come together regardless of how the vote goes on Saturday. So why am I standing up here? My name is Sarah Cousineau. I have lived in Lakeville since 1998. I moved here with my husband 15 years ago, which I know in some circles makes me a newcomer to Lakeville. But although my personal connection to the town is only 15 years old, my family's connection to the district goes back to the 70s. My uncle and my aunt are both retired teachers in the district, and I have 3 cousins who graduated from the Pontific. So I've been very familiar with this school system my entire life. I am the proud parent of Michaela, Aiden, and Kyle Cousineau, who are all in Mrs. DeYoung's first grade class at Assawamsett. Yes, that's 3 first graders. I do have triplets, and yet I still managed to somehow get it here today all in one piece. I think probably the other thing I'd like you to know about me and why I got involved with Friends of Lakeville Education is I am a proud product of a K-12 public education. And it's my feeling that the public schools are best positioned, best skilled at educating our children and preparing them to be successful adults. So let's just talk a little bit before we get to the point where we're telling you our story. There are a couple of things that we sort of want to get on the table. No one is more disappointed than me that we are here tonight talking about a Proposition 2.5 override. The financial problems in the schools go back as long as I've been a resident, so that's 15 years, and from what I hear from other people, go back beyond that. It is disappointing that we are, every couple of years, coming together in crisis for our schools. We are at a point where there's not a lot of trust, right? There's not a lot of trust in the school budget. There's not a lot of trust in the town budget. There's not a lot of trust amongst people involved with the schools and the towns to be able to work together. I feel it every day here in town, and I think probably a lot of people do too. There's a lot of history here that is weighing us down. I was talking to somebody today, and I feel like that history in some ways is an anchor that can pull us down to the bottom of the ocean if we can't let it go. I'm not suggesting that the history is not important, that we don't learn from it, but I think we've got to learn from it in a way that's going to help us to move forward. We're also not here tonight to tell you that schools are perfectly run, because we all know that's not true. There are lots of opportunities for improvement. The test scores are all headed in the right direction, and that's good news. It's good news for our children. It's good news for the schools. But that doesn't mean that there aren't other important issues out there that need to be addressed. We have open critical positions in our schools right now, from the top administrative level on down. I know that there are parents out there who have strong feelings about practices in the schools, about homework and other critical issues. And the feeling of the Friends of Lakeville Education is that those issues are important. We need to be able to deal with them. But if we move into crisis mode, if we move into an area where we've got skyrocketing class sizes, where we're cutting back so severely on programs that we're increasing our costs in the future, that all those important issues, all those things that are important to us in the schools are just not going to get dealt with. I know that there are some people here tonight who have said to me that they're willing to vote yes, and we thank you for being here. We thank you for your support, and we thank you most importantly because we know that your support comes at a price to your house, to your household rather. we're all going to have, if this goes through, we will all be writing a larger check each quarter to the town of Lakeville for our property taxes. And we thank those of you who have, after thinking about it, have been able to make us, feel like you make that sacrifice within your house in order to pay the higher property taxes we need to fund our schools. We also know that there are people here who are voting no, and we know that you have legitimate reasons for that, and we welcome you here tonight with us to help ask the hard questions so that maybe you might hear some new information that might allow you to vote yes on Saturday. And we also know that there are people here tonight who are on the fence, who don't know which way they're going to vote on Saturday. And it's maybe to you that this meeting, we hope this meeting will be most important. We hope that you're going to hear information tonight that will help you to make an informed decision on Saturday, help you to learn a little bit more about what's going on in the schools, and help you to cast that vote on Saturday. We hope it is in favor of the override, but obviously it's up to each of us as citizens to make that choice. So let's talk a little bit about how the evening's going to run. We are not going to give a lengthy budget presentation tonight. The budget presentations have been out there for several months. They've been discussed at public meetings. They're available online. Anybody who's not heard the budget presentation is welcome to go out and look at it. We'll help you find it, but we feel like that's ground that's been covered quite a bit and probably not useful to you all. We're also not going to spend a lot of time talking about impacts to the schools if we don't do the override. Again, those facts have been out there for a while. We have fact sheets available in the lobby if you've not had a chance to look at them, you're not sure what it means to the schools. But again, that information's been out there for a long time. We don't think it's worth your time to review it once again. What we're going to do instead tonight is we've got a panel of people, some elected officials, some business people, some folks here in the school system. We're going to tell you a little bit more about why they feel like this override is needed from their perspective. And we want them to tell you their story, to hear from others other than just the school administration as to why we feel that this is important. Once we've heard from our panel, we'll do a few moderated questions, and then we'll open up the floor for questions as well. Just so you can kind of plan ahead as we get to the open Q&A. I'm going to structure it a little bit differently than maybe other meetings that you've been at. We want as many people as possible to ask questions tonight, to have a really good conversation as a community. So each person will be asked to ask one question or make a comment, and we'll put a time limit of 3 minutes on that comment or a question, allow you to get an answer or get a response to your comment, and then have a follow-up as well. If you have additional questions that don't get answered during the meeting, we'll have some forms up at the front. We'll invite you to leave your name, your contact information, and if there's additional questions that you didn't hear the answers to tonight, we'll do our best to get those answers to you. We're all here tonight because we care about our town. We're all here tonight because we care about our schools. And probably most importantly, we're all here tonight because we care about our children. Every single one of us here in this auditorium tonight has those, I think, has those three things in common. And in a short amount of time, really Saturday after 4 o'clock, this is all going to be over. And we're going to have to move forward as a town. There's not going to be an anti-override group and a pro-override group. We're all going to be citizens of Lakeville again. So what we hope to do is have a discussion tonight, have a conversation with you all, that regardless of how the vote goes on Saturday, allows us to move forward together as one town, as one collective body of citizens to do our best for our communities. So with that, I'm going to ask our panelists to head up to the stage, and I'm going to turn over our mic to Dr. Huizenga, whichever place you'd like to do. Would you like to do it from the floor, or?
Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to do a couple of quick comments, just some facts that we have gone over in the budget discussions over the past couple of months since November. These are just some facts that we put out there, and I hope that these are going to answer some of the questions ahead of time, but maybe it'll give you some questions to fuel some thoughts. So if you just focus up here, I just want to give you some facts to consider. I've given this in every budget presentation, but I think that they're important. So Freetown and Lakeville, we're in the top third in the state in per capita income, yet the bottom 10th in the state in what we spend on schools. Some people have asked about net minimum, what we spent this year over the minimum amount that the state requires. We spent 1.4%, or $218,000 above the net minimum. We have always met our net minimum. That was something that was asked over the weekend. We have always met our net minimum. It is the legal requirement. And Freetown and Lakeville have historically supported our schools above the net minimum. We're ranked third from the bottom in spending above net minimum from local area schools. And we're 16th out of 20th in per pupil spending. We spend about $11,100 per pupil. And I just wanted to show you, in terms of comparison, if you look at Freetown and Lakeville, you can see right up here, we spend about $11,119 per pupil, and it is a bit lower than surrounding districts. Yet our state rank has been very good. Our teachers are working very, very hard, and our test scores are on the rise. So there's a lot to celebrate and a lot of great things to continue. Again, in per pupil spending, we rank sort of near the bottom. Only Taunton is below us in comparable area districts. So it's just important to know, when you look at the comparable median household income, we're up near the top, yet we're spending near the bottom on our schools. So net minimum, okay, you're going to hear that term tonight a lot. Net minimum is what is legally required, the absolute minimum amount. And as you can see, there's been a steady decline in the amount that we're spending above net minimum over the course of time. And I'll have this presentation up for you to take a look at on our district website. Okay? So this question is going to come up tonight. Where's the deficit coming from? Why do we have a deficit? I know that that's been a big question out there, and I just want to put it out front and let you know where this deficit has come from. So this is part of the budget presentation that I gave, but I think it's important to reiterate again for those of you who are just kind of coming into the conversation. Last year, the town of Lakeville and Freetown voted a $33,413,222 budget. However, our expenses were much, much higher than that. We had out-of-district special education costs and other expenses that exceeded that amount last year. And it was a great winter. How many of you remember the wonderful winter we had last year compared to the torturous one this year? So it's really important to follow this logic. We had quite a bit of savings in electric and gas. But our budget number, the towns could not afford to spend any more than the 1.4% or $218,000 above the net minimum. So we utilized that end of year savings and put it towards special education costs and prepaid them. So right off the bat, we were $533,000 in the hole. Does that make sense? So we had special education costs, our budget needs were higher than what we were able to fund. So right off the bat, we were $533 in the hole. And then we came to August and September and we started school, and we realized that we had some classes in the middle school of over 45 students in a classroom. We had students in the 8th grade who were unable to take algebra because we didn't have enough staff to cover those classes. And those students were being robbed of the opportunity to take advanced math because we simply didn't have the ability to put them in those classes. So we went to the school committee and I asked them to approve the addition of 3 staff at the middle school. We also had a class at the high school, a phys ed class with 100 students in it with 2 teachers. Can you imagine corralling 100 high schoolers with 2 adults? Think about that in that tiny gym over there. It was very dangerous and it was unsafe. So we had to add a position. The town also, specifically Lakeville, asked us to have music full-time at the elementary school, and school committee approved those positions. They were for safety reasons, they were for educational reasons. And in total, our budget that we're operating on this year is $753,268 above what the voted number of last year's town meeting is. So as you can see, this year we started off $750,000 in the hole. Okay? Now, in addition to that, I want you to roll over that $753,268 in costs to FY14, because we're already in the hole at $750,000. and add the following. Step and level increases, okay, our contractual obligations to teachers, health insurance increases, Bristol County retirement increases, workman's comp increases, building insurance increases, unemployment insurance increases, and our educational evaluation software. These increases on top of the $753,000 are $1.2 million. That is where the deficit has come from, okay? So this is not fiscal mismanagement, this is not overspending. This is increased costs and a deficit that we walk into, okay? So we also, the other thing you need to know is we have revenue that's being discontinued. Grants that we have been using to support teacher positions are going away. Our REAP grant, our CIC grant, our Schulman grant in upwards of almost $320,000. So we have revenue decreases. You can see we have cost increases. This is where your deficit is coming from. I wanted to make sure that that was clear tonight, and that is why we have a deficit. I'm going to turn it over to the panel now.
We did not, unfortunately, get a wireless mic, so you all are going to have to maybe shift positions a little bit. We're stuck with a very short microphone cord. But as I said, what we wanted to do is give you a chance to hear from some of our elected officials, business people, and citizens. We're going to just talk for a couple of minutes each about why they feel like this override is important to our schools and to our town. And Dave, do I have you as a volunteer to maybe start? Okay.
I'm coming down here because those lights are killing me. Just to let you know, I only have till about 8:50, so when I leave, please, I won't be running away from you or anything like that. My name is Dave Davenport. I've been on school committee for a few years, and not a real long time. And I'm a bit of a known quantity. I got a big mouth, and I've made a lot of headaches for some people and whatnot. And I think that a lot of people that know me would have expected me to maybe break ranks with the committee and the administration and not support this override. Because full disclosure, I didn't support mutualization. And also, in the first year when mutualization was being organized and implemented, I was very upset when there was some backtracking and the S1s at fourth grade did not get moved over to Grace. I fought that to the bitter end and beyond. And didn't come to pass that year. But I got a polite pat on the back behind the scenes that the administration wouldn't dare do that again to save women. And fourth grade is only there this year. But enough about me. I've got 2 kids in the system. That's great, and an override might help them, but that's not really why I'm taking this position. The reasons I'll give for starters might be different than typical reasons. I look around this district and I try to decide, does this district have the money to function properly or not? How do you tell? Well, I don't think we're going to impress each other or sway opinions too much on, was the teacher contract too big, too little, just right? Was the superintendent contract for John McCarthy, which was never implemented, by the way, he left before we started the first day. Was it too big, too little, just right? And all of these sorts of things. Is it right that our interim superintendent, who has had a short 1-year tenure here and has done such a great job, is working more than 1.5 positions, probably like 1 3/4 positions, because the assistant superintendent position was left open to save money. Nobody talks about that when everybody talks about the big fat contract that we gave to John McCarthy. All right? So things like that start making impressions upon me. We've got a big giant crack down the center of our tennis courts. It's about 2 inches wide, and grass will grow up through it, as tall as a farmer's field if you let it. And we're too afraid to spend the $6,000, I think it is, to fix the tennis courts. I think Jim Cavucio's here tonight, or at least I saw him. Okay. We're too afraid to fix that. for I think the $6,000 that it's gonna cost. I think that might get done towards the end of the year. And also the track needs to be painted for a similar kind of cost. We're too afraid to spend that kind of money. Because believe it or not, folks, we don't have the slush funds that everybody talks about. We don't have all this laying around me. If we did, the maintenance department would be tearing down 2 broken down plow trucks to try to create one that works. And we wouldn't be bailed out by Lakeville in the blizzard to get the lots plowed up because we had no vehicles that were working. There are signs, other than the common arguing points, that we'll argue until the cows come home and we might not convince one or the other of what's going on, that we need something done here. The very fact that our Board of Selectmen allowed this to move forward says something. We're not taking a position. The board respectfully, and I think rightly, believes it's the duty of the school committee to bring this issue to the citizenry and allow you to make your decisions. And I've been trying to do that. But if some of these stories about the school committee and the administration being so egregiously irresponsible and just so poor in mismanaging the district and all these things, if it was that bad, if all of this need completely came from mismanagement, fat contracts, and all that sort of stuff, then there's no responsible way that the Board of Selectmen could have ever allowed an override vote to even go forward. Now, I'm not saying that that tacitly means that the Board of Selectmen is endorsing an override. What I'm saying is that there's a message there. The Board of Selectmen, through a lot of work, in particular by Scott Belleville, who is here tonight, tried to separate wants from needs and come together with the district. And that's where we're at right now. I believe that this override is necessary. I don't believe that this override is something that I'm thrilled about or want. In 2009, I voted against the override. This time, I will be voting for the override. Not because I want to see people's taxes go up. Not because I just want to spend more money as a school committee member. But we need to make this adjustment at this time. And we need to be sustainable. I know I'm going long over my couple minutes. Our first 2 years of regionalization and this proposed budget, if you average them out, has an across-district increase of 2-ish% per year. We're being told, be responsible and stay within 3 to 3.5% to be sustainable, or at least stay within 2.5%, which is the number that is associated with the town's ability to increase its levy limit each year. Well, if you look at our first 2 budgets and the budget that's proposed, we've been under that limit. And yet we're being told that we're completely irresponsible and we have a spending problem. I think there's another side to this issue. And I think maybe looking at some of the not often looked at ways of deciding what the needs of the district are might be convincing to some people that are on the fence. Thank you.
Amy, maybe I could ask you to, we'll switch it up, ask you to go next. You can speak from the stage, or if you'd like to come down. The stage is apparently not a fun place to do.
Hi, my name is Amy Manzoni, and I work in the central office here in Lakeville. I've been with the school district since October, and I am in favor of this override. Now, I don't live in town, though. I do live in Bridgewater, which it might be easy for me to say you should vote for an override because it's not my taxes that are being affected. But the reason that I'm for the override is I come from Bridgewater, where we were in this exact same situation back in 2007. I had children in elementary school, one in elementary school, one in middle school, and I watched what happened when twice in 2007 and once in 2008 we failed to pass an override. We lost 66 teachers in our schools. Our school day was shortened. We lost all of our extracurricular activities. We lost all of our specials. Our class sizes, my son was in 3rd grade at that point, and I believe he had 36 children in his classroom with one teacher and 2 days a week she had a helper, which at that point is basically babysitting for 3rd graders, especially when you added that she was in an inclusion classroom. So she had several children, mine being one, with ADD. We lost all of our middle school sports. So any of our students that were feeding into high school, because we were a regionalized district, the students from Rainham had sports, Bridgewater did not. In high school, we lost art, music. Any students that were trying to put together portfolios for college weren't able to do that. And we do have a huge, or at that point, had a huge music program in Bridgewater, and a huge art program. And a lot of the students were non-traditional students, that they weren't in school just for the academics. They were trying to build that art portfolio. That's what kept them in school. They weren't able to do that. Now, one of the things that people didn't look at the time was that, yes, our taxes went up, but with this, or would have gone up if the override had gone through. With not passing the override and the school day shortening, for working parents, your child care expense went up. For parents that were insistent that their child should be participating in sports, you were paying for private sports, you were paying for private art lessons, you were paying for private music lessons. The out-of-pocket expense over the course of the year was much more than what your taxes would have increased. And ultimately, because the state the schools were in, a lot of people, myself included, were forced to pull their children out of the public school system that they really truly believed in and put them in private schools because we had to look at their education over our loyalty to the schools. So I ended up pulling both of my children and having to send them to a private high school in order to get the education I felt they deserved, which ultimately cost me much more than the override did when we finally passed it in 2010. It's taken us until it's now 2013, and our schools are just starting to bounce back. We just now have a library that's open more than part-time. We have a rec department that's open and running again. We have a senior center that's finally open full-time again. It wasn't just the schools that were affected. Our police station still isn't up to fully staffed to where it was. We still have a fire station that's only open part-time in town because it was a town-wide problem. And that's why, even though I don't live in Lakeville or Freetown, I can confidently say that the override truly is the best thing for the schools, for the town, for the community.
Thanks, Amy. Maybe from here, Brett, we could ask you to speak. Are you coming down as well? I didn't want to make you all sit on the stage just to make you go up and down the stairs.
My name is Brett Kolikovich. I'm probably one of the newest members of the school committee. I graduated from Concord in 1988. I have 3 children. 2 of them are in the system now, and is on his way soon. So there's a couple of things. The reason why I joined the school committee itself, wanted to join, is to be able to have access to wide information. I myself work as an IT director at Emerson College, director of user services. I'm in charge of procurement, support, help desk, all that wonderful stuff. So when I see that my budgets on our FTE, our full-time enrollment at Emerson is quite equivalent to our district as far as undergrads go. So when I look at my budgets and I look at numbers I have to project, and I look at the cost of my staff, their benefits and things like that, there might be a way I'm here and help out with what's going on. But I also work at a college that specializes in communication, and I know that there's been a lot going on in the past few years that people only told me I'm not very happy about as far as with regards to the school, the district, and things that have been happening. So I thought maybe I could try and help there as well. I know that there's a lot of trust out there right now that's not happening. I know that there's a lot of people that are upset about what happened with the search for the superintendent. I think that there's probably going to be some voting, probably against the override because of things like that. And I know that we've got some time it's going to take to bring everyone together to really look at these problems. We're probably going to do it with a little bit less attention that's probably out there right now. So getting back to the numbers. When you look at the slides that are going by, you could readily look up yourself later. That's part of what I've been doing, spending my time in the past couple of months. Even before that, when I decided to join. So what I'm seeing is the cost that we're spending per student is average or lower than surrounding towns. Our placement in the state is incredibly high compared to those same towns. And that means we're doing a lot with less. That means that we want to maintain the level of service that we've been giving the students and offer the same classes and the same services that we've been offering. In order to continue the improvements that you've seen, take a look at our flyers, for instance, that we've putting out there. The information there, you can validate that. That's not just, we're not making up the numbers in the back room, we're not coming into a situation where this data has been created. This is all verifiable stuff. This all has to be on file. So you can look it up. improvement that we've made. You know, sped costs and things, how they affect the school. Our interventions being in there and helping bring the sped numbers down, the costs down. The amount of improvement we've made in our scores, that's all real. So I know people, David Pizzolo were talking about, whoever's contract is really high and how much we're spending on its, staff and how much our teachers make and all kinds of things that get people very, very excited. We want to be excited about positive things and the positive changes that have happened during the past couple of years. Our numbers are getting better, the school is getting stronger. So for me, my biggest concern right now is when I look at the budget and where we are, is how we're going to offer the same level of service to these students next year as we did this year. Because that's how they're going to get into college. That's how they're going to do well in high school. That's how they're going to do well in elementary school and middle school. Get through this process, but if they're successful people, requires the school system to be functioning. And the same thing goes, and I put out something, we were all talking about something recently that went out, but it's also going to impact everyone here. Because honestly, take the idea that so accreditation is how we are allowed to be a degree-bearing institution. Hanukkah can't graduate seniors who can't grant degrees because they don't have enough people or enough credits in high school. How is that going to affect everyone's home price? How is it going to affect the value of anyone's property? And that doesn't just mean the parents. You are on a fixed income, some apples on a fixed income, you're retired, maybe they have an inverse mortgage, maybe they are living off of their home equity. That number is going to go down, it's available to them. That's why I'm concerned. I'm concerned for everyone. So when we look at the big picture, that's just some of the things we need to be thinking about. Or that school spending line is, we were just talking a few minutes ago about how that 2.5% budgeting would be safe, 3.5%. I know my numbers at work, at 3% per year. That's just community safety money. Well, we're talking about 1.4 on the budget. So we're talking about much lower numbers than that safety money that we have. We want to do twice that. We're being conservative, trying to make everything work for what we've got. There's a point where maintaining that level of service for next year is going to be incredibly important. We want to maintain that. So that's pretty much what I've got to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. I think you gave us a great segue to Regina. Can I just stay there?
Yep.
Okay.
So I hope everyone can hear me all right. My name is Regina Garland, and I've lived in town probably about 10 years, so relatively newcomer. Along with that, I've been 9+ years as a business owner here in this town. I'm a real estate broker. So I'm also the mother of 4 children. 3 are in the schools. We have 1 more that'll be joining the school system in about 2 years. And I can tell you, basically, speaking to Amy's point earlier, I remember 2007 to 2008 because I had a lot of clients that were looking for homes and they would not consider Bridgewater. Okay? So whether you have children in this school or not, what you have to understand is that it's a basic economic formula. Buyers are attracted to strong communities. What makes up a strong community is going to be the part of the municipality, the library, the parks and recreation department, everything. And probably on that list, most definitely, are the schools. So, when you're looking at this, you have to consider that the numbers do show a community that has a strong school district can expect to see a 12 to 14% increase in their property value as compared to neighboring communities that don't have strong school systems. And that's basically what I have to share with you tonight.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bob McGarrett, and I'm the chairperson of the school committee as of this past April. In 2010, I was elected to the Freetown Local School Committee, where I served as the last chair on the Freetown Local School Committee. I don't live in Lakeville, I live in Freetown. I am in support of the override, and if the override was needed in Freetown, I would be out in support of that as well. I think it's better that we invest in our local public schools than we send our children out to private schools. I think there's a great sense of community when the children can go to school with their own peers and with their own friends in their neighborhood. I have a 17-year-old son who is in the school district. However, he is in outplaced special education at a program in Franklin. And I see the pain in his face because most of his friends live over an hour away. So when he wants to go hang out with one of his friends from school or something, my wife and I rise to the occasion and we do take him, but it's a chore, you know, and kids that have to go to private schools are going to be in the same boat. They're not going to be with just kids from Lakeville. If you're sending them to a Bishop Stang or a Bishop Conley, they're going to be with kids from all over the area. And they're not going to be able to get that neighborhood community sense that we all had when we were children. When I first got elected to the school committee, Freetown Elementary was similar to Assawamsett in the sense that we were in pretty bad shape. We had 35, 36 kids in the classroom. I toured Freetown Elementary School quite frequently, and I was in the classrooms a lot and saw the 36 kids in the classroom. And the speaker that said that it's mostly babysitting service when you get that many kids in a class, that's absolutely what it was. It was a paid babysitting service. The learning was not that great, and our special education numbers reflected it. As our special education director had predicted, our special education numbers were 20%. That means that 1 out of 5 kids were receiving services above and beyond what we normally provide to students. And why was this? Because there are children out there who need smaller class sizes. They need a little bit of extra help to get by. And when you have large class sizes, the only resource that you have at that point is to put them in special education and put them on an IEP program. Well, since we passed school regionalization, and with the hard work of the administration, the school committee, and our teaching, and our whole staff, we've been able to reduce staff from 20% down to 14%, which is something that I'm really, really proud of, because that means that those 6% of the students are now back getting the same education as everyone else, and that's additional money that we can turn around and benefit all the students. And that's all I pretty much have to say tonight. I didn't even know I was going to be speaking tonight. I was just asked to come to the meeting tonight, so I don't really have a prepared statement. But again, I'm very proud of the tremendous progress that these schools have made. We've made progress academically. Our sports programs, our music programs are second to none. And to not fund the schools above net school spending and to have us have to cut all these programs and to go backwards, to me, makes no sense. I mean, there's been so much great work that's been done. Let's keep it moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob, and thank you to our panelists for sharing their stories and their perspectives as to why they think that the override is important to our town. We're going to do a few moderated questions before we open it up to the floor. And I know, Dave, you said that you have a time limit tonight. We appreciate you making time for us. So I'm going to start with you. I was in this very auditorium back in 3 years ago, 2010, when we all had the second meeting on regionalization, and we heard from Mr. McCarthy as to the good news of regionalization for our district and how it was going to help our finances. Yet here we are 3 years later, and we're talking about a Proposition 2.5 override. Can you just talk a little bit, Dave, about why regionalization has not helped us to the degree we thought it would, why we're here, and maybe more specifically, why here in Lakeville we're talking about an override and not in Freetown as well. And I think, Dave, that might work. You don't want to make a journey all the way down to the floor again.
You're looking at a cage up here. I just so badly want to go down to that. Okay, so I went to many a presentation on regionalization back in the day, and those presentations were front-loaded with benefits. But always at some point towards the back end of the presentation, there was somewhat of an admonition that regionalization was not going to solve all of our problems. The typical word that was dropped in was that, phrase that was it was not a panacea. That was repeated quite often. And there were some people in town government that were getting it and quite aware of that in both towns and some that weren't. Bill Lombardi over in Freetown was very concerned that regionalization was not a long-term financial plan. And he made the point of that on the Freetown side. A very large part of my opposition to regionalization is it's understandable that there would be some benefits structurally to put three separate elements that are all trying to do the same thing together and make the budget money more fungible and more able to go through those different elements and shift resources. That's all understandable. But the whole concept of was it just going to create a situation where we would never see budget increases again or whatnot? That was, I think, more of a perception that built up than it ever was a reality. You're just not going to run an institution this big over an extended period of time without any costs increasing. Now, out of the gate, the first budget year for regionalization, if you total up the 3 town budgets the year prior in the first combined budget for regionalization, the net cost went down by $500,000, rounded. All right. The second year, the year that we're in right now, the voted budget was 0.1% higher than that first budget. Now we're asking for this override, which initially the full budget request was something on the scale of 6.9% or whatnot. At 33 million, that percent would come down some. I don't have that percent in my head. But again, that's what I was talking about earlier. If you average these things together, if you average the minus 1.5%, the 0.1% increase, and then this current budget, you're talking in the 2-ish% kind of range over that time period. It doesn't seem like a runaway train to me. Yes, there's lots of arguments about how to control contracts in the future, teacher expenses and whatnot. Yes, there are things that could have been done differently, better. Absolutely. Has everything I've done on the school committee been the best I could have done? Probably not. I'm trying as I go along, as is the rest of the committee. But there's been a lot done. The regional, the town's finance committee was just in the papers with I think it was termed a grudging endorsement of this override. And there was much in there about contract this and expenses that. I didn't see in that article that last year we redid health insurance and saved money for the district, several $100,000 a year. And on the night of the meeting, it was the meeting before where this was discussed, the vote I think came in the next meeting, we went through a protest. There was, most of the teacher population came in and rallied against us and told us all the reasons why not. And there were some rather strong things that were said during that meeting. And the committee took all of that and did what it had to do anyhow. Everybody survived, everybody moved on, but that's not talked, where we saved money, that's not talked about. We also renegotiated with the custodians. There was lots of talk about we're going to go to a vendor and all these sorts of things. We negotiated in good faith with the custodians and the custodians with us, and we did save money with the custodians. Does that mean that we're doing everything right? Absolutely not. But regionalization has yielded some benefits. Regionalization also is not a way that our costs are going to spin down forever and we're just going to be able to say it shall cost whatever to our own fancy. These costs are coming along incrementally. There may be future things that we need to talk about. If our enrollment continues to decline, can we support five buildings and things such the like? But we have to get to a stable point at some point here to even have those discussions. I mean, think about it. The tax dollars that you're spending locally are the best understood tax dollars that you're going to spend. You can see what they're doing. You can argue about them. You can be frustrated about them. You can say that things should be done better. You can feel good about some of the things that you're purchasing with your local tax dollars. That's the kind of argument that we're having right now. And we do need to have an adjustment to continue the kind of progress that this district is making. If the town wants to test the district and see if it busts, that's a gamble that you can take. I don't think it's the one that we should take. You know, right now we're in a tough economy. It's been that way for a long time. Lakeville is in a difficult economy. Some of that's been brought on by the length of this downturn. Some of it's been brought on by stimulus programs that have dried up, which basically it's just like, a sugar high. It's going to go away, and then you have to figure out how to sustain your programs when federal money dries up. You hear headlines at the state level about hundreds of millions of waste. You hear headlines at the federal level about billions of dollars of waste, and that's all very frustrating. But at the local level, we're trying very hard to spend as wisely as we can. And we do need the counsel of our town selectmen, Scott and others, to show us how we can do better. Certainly, absolutely, we do need our town's FinCom to engage with us better, and we should engage better with them. But the money that we need at this point is not simply the product of total waste and foolishness at our local level. It's not. If it was, we wouldn't be here tonight. If it was, the Board of Selectmen would not have even allowed this vote to go forward. It would have been irresponsible of our town to go forward with a vote if some of the things that are floating around in Facebook and people say to be negative are true. We've got a lot going on in our district that is positive, and we need to sustain that into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Dr. Huizenga, my next question is for you. Something very painful happened in our district on Friday when our teachers and paraprofessionals were given pink slips, layoff notices. There is a lot of concern, and I would say some anger in the community based on information, whether it be factual or not, about the timing, the date of the layoff notices, the manner in which they were given to the teachers, and the extent to which the pink slips have now impacted our children. How our children, whether it be because parents have engaged them or not, are now suddenly very, very aware of the crisis that we're in. So I was hoping tonight that maybe you could talk about the process by which the paraprofessionals and the teachers were notified by Friday, and help us understand really why it was done in the way it was done, specifically before we had a chance to vote for the override on Saturday.
Sarah. All right, so this is a very good question, and I want to take you back a couple months. I've been having these presentations and discussions since November. I've spent many evenings in here talking to one or two people about this budget situation that's happening here. In the last couple of months, the EAFL, which is our teachers union, the president and I have had many discussions about the deficit and the number of staff that we were facing to lose if the override did not pass. There are two dates currently in our contract. Statewide, all teacher contracts have a drop dead date of June 15th for staff to be notified. So on or before June 15th is where our teacher contract calls for RIF notices or pink slips to be given to staff. And generally, this is that date for performance reasons. So it gives administrators an adequate amount of time to be able to evaluate staff and to be able to give them a fair and proper evaluation, and then give them proper notice in order to, let them go. But our paraprofessional contract states it's May 15th, so we had a quandary. We also have a situation statewide where job positions, many towns have had their town meetings already, and they have posted positions, and they have closing dates that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. And so in collaboration with the teachers union, we had initially set the date for May 15th so that all staff would be notified on the same day. On May 1st, we had a school committee meeting, and in talking with the school committee, we had a public discussion that evening, and out of concern, out of respect for our teaching staff, and also knowing the history that overrides have not generally passed in Lakeville, And with the number of teaching positions that are open right now, and you can talk to many teachers who are sitting in this audience and some administrators, that positions are closing in the next 2 weeks. And I know that positions that we have currently open, and in speaking with my own husband, who's a teacher in another district, applications are exceeding 200 per position. And we're very concerned for our teaching staff, and we felt that if we waited until after the 18th, we would be putting them into the end of May and June before they knew for sure where or if they were going to be going, or if they wanted to start applying. Some teachers have already started applying. This was not a surprise to any teacher. All teachers knew beforehand that they were going to be getting a slip. But the school committee instructed me on May 1st to set the date on or before May 10th. We did it on Friday afternoon, so there would be as little impact to students or to the teachers during the school day as possible. There were rumors out that pink slips were handed out in front of students. That is not true. None of my administrative staff gave written notices to children in front of, or to teachers in front of students. That is a rumor. That is not true in any way. Most schools gave them out at the end of the day, or teachers were called down privately to the main office and they were given their notice. All teachers were notified beforehand. If teachers were emotional, this was their humanity coming out. Should they have asked to compose themselves, any administrator on my team, if the teacher went to them and said, I just would like to compose myself before I go back to class, or could I have coverage before I go back to class, any administrator that would have been asked that question, they would have been provided coverage to allow themselves to compose themselves before they went back to class. And if they could not go back to class, we would have never expected them to go back in front of kids if they were that upset that they felt that they could not control their emotions. So, this administration in no way conducted this kind of RIF allocation in any way different than has been done in the past, or in an unprofessional or disrespectful manner. In fact, it was out of respect and caring for these people, for their livelihoods, for their careers, for their families who they support each and every day by working hard for our children. We wanted to do it in a timely manner to allow them the time to go and pursue other options if in fact this override did not pass. So that was the reason for the timing. I was following my orders from the school committee. And I just want you to know that, I am married to a teacher. I was a teacher. I've been pink slip before myself. On Friday, I sent an email to the staff, and of comfort, and I wanted to let them know that as soon as this was resolved, this would be, the notices would be sent to them, that they would have their positions. And I let them know in that email that I was right there with them. That I was, feeling, the dismay and the, difficult emotions that they were. In no way is this administration cruel, heartless, cold, or acting in any way unprofessional. And I do hope that you'll believe that, because I respect teachers. I love my teachers. They are incredible professionals. And they've been working very, very hard under very, very difficult circumstances. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. One last moderated question before we open it up to the floor, and Scott Belvey, if I could call on you for just a second. I feel like I'm having a little bit of deja vu, because I've been in town, as I said, for 15 years, and I think we've had at least 2 override votes, maybe 3 in that time. And I know I'm not the only one who does not want to be in this position again anytime soon. Can you talk a little bit about what we're doing as a town in the short term and in the long term to make sure that we're providing adequate funding and adequate expense control, not just for the schools, but for all our town services, so we're not back here in a year or 2 asking for an override for public safety or any other town service? I know, let's pick the question.
Scott Dallow, I'm the chairman of the Lakeville Board of Selectmen. There actually has been overrides passed. There's only one that hasn't been passed. which is in 2009, and we tried to do the new for the schools that are in the town as well. There was two, and if you remember, if you were in town back then, there was two questions on the ballot. Would you support $1 million override, or would you support $1.7 million? I can't remember the exact ones, but it's close to that amount. And they both failed miserably. Back in 2008, when the economy tanked, everything went down, and you know that we had lack of funding, and that's why Swanson was over private government. We knew that this problem was going to come up, and what are we going to talk about? Let's talk about the 2.5 override. All right, the 2.5 override sounds like, oh, geez, the town should be able to support the school and all their spending on 2.5% override. It's a lot of money, 2.5%. Well, it represents $414,000. That's what 2.5% represents in our town. Our net school minimum from the state of Massachusetts for the schools is $340,000 this year. We also have to spend $185,000 on kids that go to Old Colony. So just between those two schools, never mind Bristol Aggie or any specialty schools that our children go to, that eats up all of our 2.5% override. Never mind teacher contracts, police contracts, fire contracts, town employees, expenses that go up, oil, which the schools, so the oil goes up every year. Electricity's been going down, thank God. That's what we have to sustain in the town. Now we're in pretty good shape town-wise. We're not in perfect shape. We have buildings that are falling down. We have a police station that someday we're hopefully going to build a new public safety building so that we can put our fire and police in one. Yeah, but that's not today. We're very realistic, and we know that we don't have the money right now. And we know that our tax base, our clients, which is the townspeople, don't have that kind of revenue right now. We get to the towns, so we do all those things. So as a town base, I think we're doing pretty good. The schools are a different matter because when we did full regionalization, our costs went up $500,000 a year. All right, there was big savings for the region, but not for the town of Lakeville. And I hate to tell you, I was for regionalization, so I wasn't against regionalization. I thought I understood the benefits of it. So I think it works. But unfortunately, we have 500 more students in the schools. So therefore, Lakeville's spending about $3 million more than Freetown on our schools. Fair is fair. We have the children. So unfortunately, we don't have the budget. We don't have the numbers to support the schools like we want to support them. In the past, we've given $1 million to our schools over net school spending. When we had the money, we give it. But we don't have, we used to be able to count on $300,000 a year increase from state aid every year. We've gotten 0 in 4 years of an increase from state aid. Matter of fact, our state aid was cut. So we're doing more with less in the town, just like the schools are doing. I don't know, did I answer all your questions? So I think the town is fine. We put this override on the ballot so that the taxpayers can decide which direction they want to head as far as funding the schools. We knew this problem was, we've been working on this problem since July. The Regional Finance Committee members, along with administration for the schools, have been working on this since July. We knew that we had a deficit. We knew we were going to, not a deficit, we knew we were going to be about $1.8 million short. It wasn't there's no deficit with the schools. We can't deficit spend. It's town government. So there's no deficit. It's just we know that we're about $1.8 million, $2 million shy of funding this budget. We knew that one-time revenues were going to go away. Now, it's a question of how do we fund it. I said I would be more than willing to let the taxpayers decide. The Board of Selectmen has not taken a position. Personally, I think we need this override. I've already voted today for the override. I think we need to stand behind our schools and give the funding for our kids and for our town and community as well. But I'm only one person. So it's all up to the taxpayers to decide.
At this point, we are going to open up the floor to questions, and we have more people here than we thought we might, so we have a little bit more flexibility on our Q&A. We would really ask for a couple of things. One is that we do want to limit it to one question per person. If we sort of run out of people asking questions, obviously we can be flexible on that. I'd also like to, given that we are more than halfway through our meeting, we'd like to keep you to about 3 minutes. You know, we're not going to pull the mic away if you go a little over, but we'd like to make sure we give as many people a chance to talk as possible. And of course, we want to make sure that we keep our questions in as well as our answers respectful and understanding that we have divergent opinions in this room, and that's okay, because we need to talk about those things which divide us before we can come together. So with that, we'll open it up to the floor, and we can have our first question.
I don't think I can start off by having one question, but just so very important thing that other people have talked about was the regionalization. I don't know how many people you were around for that meeting, but we had, when that was thing to vote, it was voted down. That was the night of the Cisco meeting. I'd like to see how many people were here at that meeting, the Cisco meeting. Okay, well, just for information for everybody that doesn't know it, that ended quite late. When the time came to vote for the override, we did vote it down. But what happened within the next day or week, somehow or other, the news was that some of the people had left. And therefore, we had to have another meeting to vote on it again. To this day, I haven't found out if that was legal or not. We already had enough people here. So we did vote it down, but it did as it came to pass. So again, one of the things I bring that up, if the vote for the override doesn't pass, would they then have the next day or the next month have it to, can you bring it again? Now, we don't have, the other thing, and I haven't got to a question, you notice, where's our boards? I expected, how come this is the only attendance? Usually when there's an override coming up, there's the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, the legal representative. They're not here. Why is that? Can anyone tell me that? Why is this the only group that's here tonight? I mean, just got one person from the Selectmen Board. Why isn't your board here?
This is not a Board of Selectmen's meeting, this is not a finance meeting, this is a
Friends of Lakeville.
That's already two questions.
Well, I know, but the question is very
What's your
important.
third question?
He said this is not a, but why would an important override, this is the first time that I can recall when there was going to be a major vote, why when there's a major vote for the town of Lakeville to pay taxes and these boards are not here, and I know you only want one question, but what was told to me today is that the financial board had put in that they were going to be in favor, yet the last meeting that I seen, most of those boards were not in favor of it, but all of a sudden they are. So again, where I'm only going to limit it to, if you want to say the question, then I will cease. Thank you.
No, I want to let you know, this override, from the selectmen's point of view, was let the taxpayers decide whether they want to fund the schools, but it's not the selectmen's job to sell an override to the citizens of Lakeville. It's the school committee's job to sell the override to Lakeville. This is their budget. This is their budget request. We put a number together that would should sustain the schools for a good 3 years. That was my responsibility, to make sure that we didn't come back here 2, 3, 4 years from now asking for more money. So this is not a Board of Selectmen meeting. It's not a regional finance. It's not a finance committee meeting for Lakeville. This is a friends of Lakeville to get the word out that there is a vote coming up on Saturday, and to let people know for or against, and have a forum to talk about. But I've had many people at my Board of Selectmen meeting, and those have all been televised, and we've talked about this override several times. over the past, actually since last year. We talked about the original override that we did, the tennis schools from last year, and technology. So this is not what's not. So. I do know what you're saying, but you should come to our meeting and ask those questions, and you'll get all your answers to all your questions.
I didn't go first make it a financial meeting, but when I did see it, it certainly was not in paper, because in some companies they just do or something, so they do charging rate on card.
No, that's, no, absolutely not. So I can talk to you later. That was not our regional, that was not, I think they were talking about the regional FinCom meeting. And they were talking about the finance committee meeting.
Other questions from the audience?
Can I clarify on okay. The FinCom has submitted a letter to the Middleborough Gazette, and one of the FinCom members has been distributing that letter through Facebook and I imagine other media, but that's where I saw it. And that's where their position, I think I'm quoting, grudgingly support. They listed some difficulties that they have with district practices and things that they would like to see improved upon in the future, but they also in the letter recognized a need, and they termed their support grudging support for the override. So I don't know if that's going to get into the Middleborough Gazette this week, but it is a letter that the FinCom submitted to the Middleborough Gazette. And I didn't get it in the paper, I got it sent directly to me, and I'm assuming other people have seen it as well.
Thanks, Dave. We did just have a question from the audience, and I don't know whether, Scott, you would be able to answer this, but is there, or does somebody have available the ballot itself and how the override question will be worded? I know that there are very specific requirements by the state as to what must be on the ballot itself.
I don't have it in front of me. I don't have it in front of me, but it came from town council. It absolutely has to be worded a certain way so that it's legal and binding. And that question was actually, the motion was made on our meeting to put a dollar amount, which is 1.5 million, on an override, approximately 2.5 override. I don't have the exact terminology of wording, but it was that.
So there's only one, may I just clarify, there's only the one, maybe a yea or nay?
Yeah, we're not going to do 5 different choices to confuse everybody, and just one. This is all money. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of confusion in the last couple of weeks, just because our budget is not etched in stone, meaning that we don't know what our revenues are. We don't get our state numbers until they're finalized and signed by the governor. The governor puts his budget forward in January. The Senate puts out their version, the House puts out their version, and by the time they all pass it and bring it back to the governor to sign, it could be night and day 10 different times. So our numbers, I don't want to say they're floating, but budget numbers are soft because we don't know what's coming in and what's going out. We're pretty good in the town. We can print a report on every department of what every dime is spent for anything in that department. We have very good software. But when it comes to revenues coming in and what we anticipate, one day, 3 weeks ago, we had a deficit, well, not a deficit, we were short on our budget over $300,000. That one, 2 weeks before that, we were $191,000. And now we're down to $49,000. So I mean, it varies, it goes up and down. Now that doesn't mean that we're not going to make our we're going to definitely fund our schools. That was first priority. We have to. If we don't, we lose our Chapter 70 money or put our Chapter 70 money at risk, I should say. I don't know if they take away from this one year. They certainly wouldn't like the state if we didn't fund our schools properly. So there's other services in town that we'll have to do without, meaning that we'll have to probably not put money in our GASB 45, meaning that our futuristic retirement for our employees, we're not going to be able to fund that properly this year. We're only required to put a very minimal amount in, but being fiscally prudent, we want to make sure that we have enough money in there for retirement for our employees. So there's certain things that we won't be able to do town-wise right now, with the numbers that are coming in. But we're not going to lay anybody off in town. So I don't know, there's rumors like that going around. No one's going to lose their job. Hopefully, unless it's going to be crazy. But no one's going to lose their job in town. We're going to make our endeavors. We're going to make it work. The town's been doing the best for a long time, and that's the way it's going to continue.
Any question from the other side?
Hi, my name is Hank, and I readily support the override. That isn't currently selling on that. The part that I didn't understand earlier, and I'm not trying to be argumentative or anything like that, I just didn't understand it. The part with fiscal 2013 started at $750,000 in the hole. Can you repeat that once more? I just didn't follow it.
So I'll talk from here. So essentially last year, there was many discussions between Mr. McCarthy and the boards of selectmen in both towns to come to a budget number that the towns could support. But the problem was that our costs were much higher than what the towns could afford. And the number that they came in at that was affordable, I mean, I know that I sat in on meetings as I was transitioning into the superintendent's role, where, John and Scott and Rita were going back and forth about the fact that, we needed more money to keep the class sizes at the level that, regionalization had promised to, keep our staffing levels at the best place that they could be. And we cut back administration. In fact, that's something I want to address in terms of our staffing. So we cut administration last year. We tried to cut corners and save in a lot of places. But the budget number that Lakeville and Freetown could afford was significantly less than what our costs were. But John and Mike, in collaboration with the town of Lakeville, we knew that we were going to have end-of-year savings in electric because of the winter. In oil, we didn't use up that money that had been budgeted. So we were able to come to a number that Lakeville and Freetown could afford and make up the costs for out-of-district special education, which is a part of our overall operational budget, using that end-of-year funds. Now, what happened is that we actually spent less than the net minimum requirement last year. And the town of Lakeville, Freetown, the school committee, we received a letter from the state citing us for not meeting the net minimum last year. But they gave us a slap on the wrist and said, but you're okay because you made it up this year. Because we used that money last year that was supposed to go towards the budget, and we rolled it over and used it for this year. So that special education cost was $533,000. Okay, so the $533,000 was what we used of end-of-year funds to make up the deficit that we had in out-of-district special education costs. And then we also, as I said, over the summer, August and September, came upon those staffing issues that I spoke of earlier, the high class sizes at the middle school, the lack of our ability to have students taking algebra, because we didn't have enough staff. We had the overcrowded physical education classes here at the high school of 95 to 100 students. So I went to the school committee and I said, for safety reasons, for educational reasons, I strongly recommend that you consider adding these positions so that we can properly educate the students this year. So we also added those positions. So that brought us up to $735,000. Which now this year, those are costs that we have right out of the gate that we have to make up. and then you add all the additional increases, you come up with the deficit from our requested budget. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, except the part where there was 1 year, that means that 2 years ago, there was you were able to get by on net school spending.
No, we've never gotten by on net school spending. In fact, I'll show you.
You said that. I didn't think you did, but.
No, we've never
you did
gotten
say
by.
that.
I'll show you where we were
When
in
the
net.
state sent you the letter for.
Oh, yes. So the state sent us the letter because this past year we didn't spend our net minimum.
That's what.
Yes, this past year we didn't spend the net minimum amount because we used those end of year funds for FY13. So we actually spent under, it's very complicated, I know. We actually spent under the net minimum and we got cited by the state because we used money that we were supposed to use to spend for FY12 in our FY13 budget. So we don't want to find ourselves at net minimum again. Like this year, we have to spend every penny of our budget in order to meet net minimum because we're so close. We're only 1.4% above net minimum this year. We have to spend every penny in order to make up last year and to ensure that we spend our net minimum amount this year. So every penny, we have no wiggle room this year in order to spend our net minimum.
Other questions from our audience tonight?
I think I'll just not attempt that. Okay, so. We crashing down everywhere. Can you talk a little bit about net minimum versus our requested budget and what the difference is there? If we only fund net minimum and what that means, so,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, so it's very interesting, this whole budget thing. I'm a curriculum and instruction person, and I've had a huge learning curve this year. It's been awesome. But we went about it this year as an administrative team building a zero-based budget, which means we literally started from zero, building up from the ground, not taking into account anything else from the past, any prior services, and we really tried to build a zero-based budget. Now, the state requires a minimum net spending, okay? That's school districts, and this is developed based on a formula which takes into account property value of the town, income level of the town, which builds this foundation budget formula, okay? And so you get your Chapter 70 allocation from that, and then the towns are determined based on property value and income level what their share is. Now, I just need to let everybody know this, and this is important. This formula is 20 years old. It was developed in 1993 as a part of Ed Reform. And this, as you can see, our net historical analysis, there's been a steady decline in the percentage that is being spent above net minimum. And we could argue back and forth, is net minimum fair? Is it enough to support our schools? I would argue net minimum is not enough to support our schools. It was a formula that was developed 20 years ago, and in that time, the number of mandates, requirements, and just costs have far exceeded what the net minimum gives us to properly educate children. So our request for the percentage above net this year, I think, will be about 6% above net. This year is currently 1.4% above net. The state average, meaning that across the state, the Commonwealth, all the 300 plus cities and towns, the average percent above net minimum that towns spend in the state of Massachusetts is 15.5% above net. As you can see, in FY13, we are spending 1.4% above net minimum. It is not enough to properly fund our schools. Now, the base budget that when I presented the budget to the towns, I presented 3 different budgets. A base budget, which was the absolute minimum budget that we felt we could keep the doors open and even hold children in our schools, meaning that it would be an overrated babysitting service at the base budget. The RIF notices, the number of cuts that you've heard, 59.9 staff, is at the base level. The base budget that I presented to the towns is $488,000 above the net minimum. I'm going to repeat that. The base budget, meaning the very lowest budget that I presented as an option, which is an utter decimation of your schools and a cut of 59.9 staff, is $488,000 above the net minimum. That means if in fact this override fails and all we are able to do is fund the schools at net, which is what the town of Lakeville will be able to do and will have to do based on their legal obligation, I will still have to go back and find another $500,000 somewhere. And that's going to be a challenge that the school committee and I and my administrative team will have to face. And that will be above and beyond the 59.9 staff currently right now that are facing layoffs.
What if the override does pass? What does it get us?
Right. So if the override passes, I have that here. So if the override passes, I didn't put up all the cool data that I got to show off at the State of the Schools meeting, but our test scores are increasing in a very exciting fashion here in Freetown and Lakeville. All of our scores are on the rise. Our literacy scores at the elementary school are on the rise, so much so that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed have taken great notice in our work and have sent teams of people here to actually come and study what we're doing. That is how well this school district is beginning to move. So this budget request, this 2.5 override, will allow us to keep our class sizes in the range of 15 to 26 in grades K to 8. At the early grades, they'll be all below 25, which is based on what we feel are adequate class sizes and also what we promised as a part of regionalization. At the high school, class sizes will range between 18 and 28. It will maintain electives, AP electives, and AP courses at the high school, properly maintain compliance with special education. Our base budget and net school spending, we will not be in compliance with special education services. We'll continue to decrease special education services. Since I came to this district in 2010, we have over 100 less special education students in this district. And that is because we are providing early intervention for our kids. We are teaching them to read young. We are filling gaps before they become problems that are putting students in special education, which sometimes can cost double what a general education student costs you as a town. So we're doing great work keeping special ed maintained. Leveraging technology, providing 21st century learning experiences for your kids is something that we're going to be able to do in this budget. Providing adequate support and coordination for teachers. I talked a little bit about mandates that have come about in the last 20 years. One of those mandates is the new teacher evaluation system, which is causing about 300 more hours of work for my administrative team. And my 2 administrators here have some handouts for you. I'm going to ask them to pass them out now. That will show you that we have actually decreased administrative staff in the last 3 years. We're below the state average in administration. We are lower than most school districts in this area in our administration. And this budget is going to help us to be able to, support and be in compliance with this mandate. Continually providing intervention supports for kids so that they can, continue to thrive and fill gaps in learning. professional development, which is one of the keys to our success in the last 2.5 years, and meeting contractual obligations of our teachers. So really important information, and this budget is going to provide a lot at overall less money than we've been spending in the past. So. And one thing I want to talk about is sustainability. This $1.5 million override, a lot of people talk about, we don't want you to come back to us again for more. Well, what we did is a projection over the next 3 years into FY17. And as you can see, based on our projections, at the most, we're looking at, what is that, 2.8%? And that is to address the step and level raises and step and level increases in 2015. But we are well below the 3% that the budget, that the override has projected out to sustain us. And so we do believe that we are going to be sustainable while the towns and the school committee and the finance committee and the economic development board all work to find other means of revenue rather than just the taxpayer. So those are, I guess. What is that? Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yes, it'll be $1.5 million. Let's stress it.
Yeah.
Let's stress that. It's $1.5 million override this year and every year, unless things turn around. We can always reduce our budget as well. It's not. Someone said that $1.5 million is forever. It could be forever, and probably in the real world it might be forever. So we're going to look at it as forever. But there are other towns that actually decrease their budget as well. So, yeah, it's $1.5 million to go to the schools so that they can sustain them going forward for the next few years. No, this is not a debt exclusion. A debt exclusion would only be, you're going to vote for this for X amount of years. This is actually to fund salaries and the education process for the schools. This is not for a building. That would be a debt exclusion. That would be, we're buying a $10 million building, and the $10 million building is paid off, the debt is gone. Right? So we don't charge the taxpayers. That's not what this is. This is a 2.5 override. Well, let's talk about why we're here in Lakeville. Our net school, we're talking about net school minimum. Our net school minimum has increased over $1 million in the last 3 years. Okay? So we're giving more than $1 million more this year than we did 3 years ago. That's what's happening. As mandated by the state. Well, and it has to do with this crazy formula. The real problem, I hate to tell you, the real problem is the state. The state looks at us in the town of Lakeville and they say, okay, we looked at your average income, we looked at your average home values, we looked at all the 4 requirements, there's 2 other ones, and you know what? You have the ability to pay more. So, forget about the fact that because we have high income earners in the town of Lakeville, and those high income earners pay more money in taxes to the state of Massachusetts. Instead of funding our schools properly and giving the money back to our students, they give the schools to neighboring towns. So we have to come up with 66% between us and Freetown. Have to come up with 66% of our schools as net school spending, where neighboring towns have to come up with less than 50. Some towns have to come up with less than 10. That's the real problem. Now, if the state of Massachusetts said, let's take every child in the state, let's divide them on how much money we're going to give out to education, and fund that to the schools, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be having this discussion. But that's the real problem. What's the question? I think this is gonna sustain us for a good 3 years. I don't think the school's gonna come back to us next year and say we need another override. I look at a number put forward to the, I thought would be, number one, palatable to the taxpayers of Lakeville. Number two, that would sustain this school system hopefully for the next 3 years. Now, including in that, we have to look at what our ability to give more money to the schools is going to be over the next 3 years as well. We've always been able to make this $340,000 increase. We spent $340,000 for the last 3 years. So that we know that the town's going to have additional revenue that we can actually fund our schools with as well. We have a bunch of pieces of property that are for sale in Lakeville that we hope to develop, like the Lakeville Hospital site. At some point, something is going to happen. But it's owned by private developers. It's not owned by the town. We've done infrastructure stuff as part of building a water tower. But some of us may or may not like the fact that we've actually built that water tower, being one of the people that built it. But that actually helps the commercial property, hopefully, for this town as well. So we need to increase our commercial base so that we can help with the towns. There's an economic development committee that was just formed 2 months ago. And it's an ongoing group. And we're looking for more business community members to come and join that. Make Lakeville a more sellable place for people. Businessmen.
This is not really a question, but to piggyback on what you're saying, Scott Melody. This is a crisis for the parents in Lakeville that have children in the school system. And this is, we all know, a very difficult time because we need to raise our taxes because we don't have the revenue. But I just want to put this out there that, like many crises, it can also turn into an opportunity for us. You have a welcoming and incredibly committed and dedicated community. The parent community in these schools is a hard-working community, a creative community, and a community that's invested in the future of this town. Never before has it become more clear to us that our town needs to raise revenue. And although at the moment, we're focused on passing this override and trying to sustain our schools, make sure we even have teachers next year. I can speak for a number of my friends and myself and say that this is an ongoing issue for us, and we are committing to raising revenues in this town. We do not want to be here again. Believe me, more than anyone else in this room, this parent community does not want to be in this position again. We want to see our town carry itself forward and raise the revenues that we need. Our children are here for the long term, we hope. As Jessica said so well this last week, we want them to want to come back to this town. We know that this override is only the beginning of a very long journey. This isn't the end for us. We are going to be working hard to try to raise those revenues. So although it's very painful to be here at this point in time, you can also look at it as a positive in that we are going to respond to this crisis in a positive way for this town. And I hope we'll see revenues raised because of it.
Any additional questions from the audience? We do have public comments left.
Not really a question. I'm Karen Quinn. I'm a kindergartner and a second grader. It's kind of a comment. It's something that was said earlier about whatever the outcome is, we are going to need to come together as a community, whatever happens, and move forward. I guess my question is what about Freetown? They have the money for this override. not for this override, they have the money to fund this without an override. We don't. If we don't come up with this, I feel like we're doing a disservice to this other town who's partnered with us, and then Blind Faith is working together with us to do what's right. And I feel like we owe it to them, not only to our own kids, to our community and the future of our community, we owe it to this town that we partner with in the long term to get this done. And I feel like if we can't come together as a community to do this, what is at stake for this other town that is working with us in the long term? So, just a comment that I have.
Is that it for questions tonight?
I have just one last one I really wanted to say. The things were going pretty well this year with the kids are achieving, the kids are scoring well on those horrible tests that are forced them to take and stuff like that. And all the credit was given to adults and stuff like that. Those kids, those are nice kids from nice neighborhoods, from nice families, and that's why they score well, because nice kids, they score well on tests. And they should get some of the credit for things going that well. It's not just the teachers, it's the kids too. The kids did a good job.
I agree. So forgive me for that omission. The kids are fantastic here, and it's really hard for me to leave these communities, and head elsewhere. But I just want to say I'm really proud of this year. This has been a great year, not just in terms of student performance, but I think in terms of relationship building. I know that the Board of Selectmen and the Superintendent's Office have worked very closely this year. I think there's been more communication to the parents this year than I can remember in the time that I've been here. I saw that need immediately when I came on board. Communication when I was a principal was always first and foremost in making sure that I engaged the community, engaged my parents. And I'm really proud that I am leaving this district with a great opportunity to forge ahead with great relationships, to build a new era of trust between the communities and the town and the school committee. We have a new school committee. You guys are primed for greatness. And I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to be able to look back and be able to follow you for the rest of my career and know that I might have had a little bitty part in that, and to see you all thrive. So, I really am sad to go, but I'm really proud of hopefully the legacy that all of us together are going to leave for the children of these communities. So I want to thank you for entrusting me with your children this year. It's been an honor. Really.
Anyways, as I said, in April I was elected chair of the school committee, and this certainly isn't about me, but I just want to touch upon what Dr. Heisinger said with the administrators here. One of the first things I did as chair of the school committee was I took the next day off from work, and why did I do that? Because I wanted to go out and I wanted to see all the schools. I wanted to be in as many classrooms as I could, and I wanted to see the children, and I wanted to make sure that the improvements that we're being told are happening, are really happening, and they are. I mean, I work in education right now, K-12, in a small town, not too far from here, and I've seen great things happen where I work. I've seen those same things happen in Westport. I've seen those same things happen in Freetown, Lakeville, that are happening here. We've got a lot of great things going on. As a parent of a child in Freetown, I can tell you that as parents, we should be very proud of our children. All the children that I saw when I was touring the schools were very polite, very respectful to their teachers and their staff. Teachers I saw are teaching the children with new and innovative things. We have things such as flipped classrooms going on. We have technology that we have being integrated into the classrooms now. Our kids are learning. They're doing wonderful things. They're primed. They're ready. When our kids graduate from school here, they're going to be able to go on to great things. And I want to see that continue, because their success is our success. As a community, an education is the greatest gift we can give our children. And it's a gift that nobody can take away from them. And with the education that they have, they'll be able to compete. Not with people in the United States, but with people globally, because that's what we're competing against today. We're competing against people globally. And we live in a global world, we're a global economy. You know, there are other countries out there spending a lot more money on education than the United States is, and they're turning out some superstars. Well, let me tell you, we are turning out superstars here at Freetown Lakeville. Academically, sports-wise, there's something for everyone here. And I just want to say that, you know, I applaud the parents group, I applaud Scott Bellamo for helping us with the budget situation, you know, and I applaud the Lakeville Board of Selectmen for allowing this override to go forward so we can continue the great things and continue the hard work that's been put in these towns. Historically, these two towns, we did 4 major building projects in the late 90s and early 2000s. We built the middle school, we renovated the high school, we renovated the intermediate school, we renovated Freetown Elementary School. I don't know of any other town in southeastern Mass with 2 great communities that have come together to do that much to support our kids. And I know in my heart that our 2 towns will rise to the occasion and support our children. Thank you.
We are drawing towards the end. We have time for another question. If there's any more questions from the audience. We have time if you'd like to. Okay. Well, feel free to hang around if we can help you. But we want to thank you all for coming tonight. We wanted to encourage you to vote on Saturday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Grays. We hope that you got some new information tonight on which to make your decision for Saturday. We have a Facebook page if you haven't found us yet, Friends of Lakeville Education, and we encourage you to seek us out. And if you have questions, we're more than happy to work with you to get the answers that we need. Thanks very much, everyone.